The celestial accord had governed the mortal lanes for 4,000 years. Its founding charter had never been amended. Its council had never lost a vote by unanimous decision, and it had never once been forced to hold an emergency session on less than a century's notice. The chamber itself was older than most of the species it governed. Its walls were built from stone quarried out of 3 dead stars, cooled and shaped over a span of time no mortal calendar could hold, and every delegate who walked its floor was told the same thing on arrival. You are standing inside the oldest continuous government in the mortal lanes, and it has never once needed to explain itself to anyone outside it. In 4,000 years, 17 species had petitioned for standing at the high table. 11 had been granted probationary status, most of them waiting 2 centuries or more before a single vote was cast on their behalf. 4 had been granted full recognition, a status so rare that entire civilizations had risen and fallen in the waiting. 2 had been quietly erased from the record when their petitions were judged an insult to the table itself. Their names remained nowhere in the official history, only in the private memory of the gods old enough to recall them. No human had ever petitioned at all. The gods had not considered it worth forbidding. A species that had not yet learned to stop killing itself over borders, that had not built a single ship capable of crossing the lanes without a century of drift, was not a species anyone expected to sit at a table built from the bones of extinguished suns. Humanity was, in the Accord's own internal record, listed under a single administrative category, not yet relevant. The entry had not been updated in 300 years. This was the context into which Rowan Vance arrived, uninvited, on the 40th day of the Accord's 4001st year. He came alone. He came on foot, up the last mile of the approach, where the stairs are built to remind visiting delegations that they are small 6,000 steps, each one carved to a height meant to make even a god feel the climb. He carried nothing but a canvas bag and a folder of paper, actual paper, a material so archaic that 2 of the junior attendants had to be told what it was. His admissions file, when it was finally located 3 days later, was thinner than any file the gatekeepers had processed in a decade. Rowan Vance, 41 years old, formerly a records clerk for a mid-tier trade consortium. No military service, no diplomatic training, no standing with any recognized body anywhere in the mortal lanes. The clerk who processed the request read it twice, assuming an error before stamping it through, not because the file impressed her, but because nothing in Accord protocol technically forbade an unaffiliated private citizen from requesting audience. No one had ever bothered to close that loophole. No one had ever imagined anyone would use it. He asked to speak. That was all. He did not demand. He did not threaten. He asked, the way a man asks for a chair in a room that has plenty of empty ones, and something about the plainness of the request was what got him through the outer gate at all. The gatekeepers assumed anyone that calm had been sent by someone important. No one had sent him. He had spent his own savings on the passage, sold the last of his father's tools to pay for it, and told exactly one person, his sister, where he was going and Threl Voss had held the Accord's western seat for 11 centuries. He was, by any measure the table used, its most accomplished member, architect of the Second Convergence, author of the compact that ended the long silence, a god who had never lost an argument in a room in over 1,000 years of arguing. He was also, by the private admission of nearly everyone at the table, the reason nothing new had been approved in 300 years. Threl did not believe in new. He believed the Accord had already found the shape of a working universe, and that the only work remaining was defending that shape from species who had not yet learned their place in it. It was a belief he held so completely that he had stopped noticing it was a belief at all. To Threl, it had simply become the way things were, the way water is not a theory to a fish. He had turned away 8 petitions personally over his tenure, each with the same courteous, immovable language, and none of the delegations who left his chamber that day had ever come back to try a second time. When word reached him that an unrecognized primate had walked the approach and requested audience, Threll did not object. He welcomed it. A god who has not lost an argument in 1,000 years does not fear a new one. He simply prepares to enjoy it. He met Vance in the antechamber, the way certain gods meet the unrecognized, with the warmth of someone who has already decided how the conversation ends, and who finds that certainty pleasant rather than urgent. "You want a seat," Threll said. It was not a question. Threll smiled the way rooms full of old power smile at young confidence, the particular smile that isn't cruelty, only certainty, the smile of a man who has decided which side of history he is already standing on. Several of the junior council behind him smiled the same smile, the way people do when they have already agreed with the room before the room has spoken. 5 minutes, Threll said, is more time than your species has ever been given at this table. Use it well. Vance opened the folder. He did not raise his voice. He did not perform urgency because he did not feel any. He had done this work already, months of it, and what remained was only the reading aloud. In the last 300 years, he said, the Accord has not approved a single new compact, a single new trade lane, a single new settlement charter. In that same 300 years, 61 border disputes among member species have gone unresolved. 14 of them are still active as low-grade conflict. 2 have cost more lives this decade than my species has lost in its entire recorded history to war. He said it the way a man reads a weather report, not an accusation. A fact delivered flat because he genuinely believed the room simply hadn't looked at the numbers lately. "That's a curious use of your 5 minutes, Threll said. Grievances against the table, not a petition for the table. It's not a grievance, Vance said. It's the reasonable question. You asked what my species could possibly offer this room that 4,000 years of gods have not already solved. He turned a page. I brought the answer. You haven't solved it. I checked. The smile stopped. Not all at once, the way a wave stops, the seats nearest Threll first, then outward through the chamber degree by degree, until the room that had been amused was simply quiet. Threll did not smile again for the rest of the session, but he did not concede either. Certainty, once formed over 1,000 years, does not dissolve on the strength of one folder of paper. 61 disputes, he said. You've read a ledger. Reading a ledger is not the same as understanding why those disputes remain unresolved. Some conflicts are old for reasons older than your species has existed. I know, Vance said. I read those reasons too. He set 3 files on the table, side by side, and did not raise his voice to introduce them. Case 1. The Ithrankas border, unresolved since the Second Convergence, on record as irreconcilable territorial claim. I found the original survey. The claim was reconcilable in year 1. The surveyor's report says so, in his own hand. It was never reconciled because reconciling it required this council to admit the Second Convergence had drawn one line wrong. Nobody wanted to be the god who said that out loud. He did not look at Threll when he said it. He didn't need to. Threll had authored the Second Convergence. Case 2, Vance went on. The Murloc famine corridor. Marked resource scarcity, no viable remedy. The remedy was proposed by the Murloc delegation itself 40 years ago and tabled indefinitely, not rejected, tabled, which meant no one had to be on record voting against starving children. They simply never voted at all. The room had gone fully silent now, the particular silence of a chamber where nobody wants to be the first to speak and confirm they'd known. Case 3, Vance said, and here, for the first time, his voice did not change at all, which was somehow worse than if it had. The Dorenvec War. 9 years running. I don't have a fix for this one. I have a casualty count. I brought it because I think this room has stopped reading casualty counts, and I wanted to know what would happen if someone read one out loud. He read the number. He did not editorialize it. It was, on its own, the shortest sentence in the room, and it was the one that did the most damage. He set down a fourth file before anyone could speak. Case 4, he said. The Accord's own founding charter, Article 9. No petition shall be denied without formal review before the full table. I checked the review log. In 4,000 years, 41 petitions have been denied. 6 had a formal review. The rest were marked declined by consensus, which, as far as I can tell, means someone decided in a hallway and nobody wrote it down. He looked up from the folder for the first time since he'd started reading. I'm not accusing this table of malice. I don't think any of you set out to let 61 disputes rot on a shelf. I think 4,000 years is a long time to hold power, and long enough that checking your own work stops feeling necessary. That's not a crime. It's just what happens to anyone who stops being questioned. What followed was not dramatic in the way the mortal lanes imagined divine judgment to be dramatic. No thunder, no verdict from on high. It was documentary. Vance laid out 11 more cases, plainly, one folder at a time, each with a name, a date, and the specific moment a decision had been deferred rather than made. By the 8th case, Threll was no longer arguing. He was listening with the expression of a man doing arithmetic that was going to take longer than the session to finish. Orsa Keth, who held the northern seat and had said nothing until now, finally spoke. How long did this take you? 4 months, Vance said. I'm not a god. I don't have 4,000 years of memory to draw on. I only had the archive, and the archive was public. Anyone in this room could have read it. No one had. There was a fourth figure at the table who had said almost nothing through the entire session. Aveline Kaur, the Accord's eldest living arbiter, older than Threll by 6 centuries, who had chaired the founding session and had not personally taken the floor in 80 years. She had, in fact, known Vance's name for 3 months. She had pulled his petition file the week it was submitted, read it twice, and set a date for this exact session without telling the rest of the table why. She had watched the whole exchange with the precise neutrality of someone who had been waiting for the right conversation to finally happen in this room. She spoke now, for the first time. Mr. Vance, you've spent your 5 minutes proving this council has failed at its own charter. You haven't asked for a seat. Are you asking for one? The room, which had braced for almost anything else, was not braced for that. I'm asking you to read the ledger, Vance said. That's all. I didn't come here to replace this table. I came here because I believe you built something worth fixing, and nobody's fixed it in 300 years because fixing it meant admitting it was broken. I'm not owed a seat for pointing that out. I'm just the one who did the reading. Threll Voss stood. He did not storm out. He gathered nothing, gods do not carry folders, and he stopped at the chamber door, the way a man stops when he has one true thing left to say and no longer has the pride left to keep it in. The Ithrankas line, he said without turning around. I drew it wrong. I've known for 600 years I never said so. He paused. Thank you for saying it for me. He left without ceremony, no confrontation, no humiliation. A god recalibrating quietly in the doorway of a room he had ruled for 1,000 years. Vance gathered his folder, the same plain motion he had used to open it and close the canvas bag. No victory lap. No lingering to watch the room absorb what had happened. The work was done, the rest belonged to the table now. Before he reached the chamber door, Aveline Kaur spoke once more. Mr. Vance, if we opened a formal review body, every deferred petition, every tabled dispute, read in full before this table within the year, would you sit on it? Vance stopped. He thought about it the way he'd thought about everything else that day. Plainly, without performance. No, he said. That's not why I came. Put someone on it who reads ledgers for a living and doesn't need a canvas bag and a 6,000-step staircase to get taken seriously. I just wanted the reading to happen. Who does it after me isn't my business. Aveline nodded. Once, the way the oldest arbiter in the Accord nodded at very few things. Vance gathered his folder, the same plain motion he had used to open it and close the canvas bag. No victory lap. No lingering to watch the room absorb what had happened. The work was done, the rest belonged to the table now. Aveline Core opened the Accord's founding ledger, the same book that had recorded every session for 4,000 years, and in the space reserved for that day's outcome, she wrote 3 words. She wrote 3 words.